The night Mumbai learned Raghav Mehra's name, it learned it from a police siren. Red and blue lights bled into the rain, reflecting off glass towers and broken dreams alike. Raghav stood barefoot on the balcony of his one-room apartment, phone shaking in his hand, watching an empire he had built on Paisa and promises crumble in real time. Below him, the city roared like a beast that had finally tasted blood. This was the high of Nasha, the intoxication of power, money, and desire, and it had brought him to the edge of everything he could lose. Raghav had come to the city with a suitcase, a degree, and the stubborn hope of a boy who believed talent alone could conquer fate. His father had died paying debts that never seemed to end, and his mother stitched clothes late into the night so Raghav could study. He promised himself he would never beg life again. At first, he didn't. He found work at a small gaming startup where numbers danced like magic and probability felt like destiny you could control. He learned fast, worked harder, and watched as online games turned pennies into fortunes. Paisa came easy once he understood the system, and with it came applause, attention, and temptation. That was when he met Zoya Khan. She walked into his life like a soft song after a storm, eyes sharp with intelligence, laughter honest, ambition quiet but firm. Zoya didn't care about Raghav's growing bank balance. She cared about his tired eyes and the way he spoke about his mother. She worked as a freelance journalist, chasing stories about addiction, digital scams, and broken families. Where Raghav saw opportunity, Zoya saw consequences. Their worlds touched gently at first, then collided. Success changed Raghav faster than he realized. Amit Gupta, a smooth-talking investor with a smile that never reached his eyes, offered Raghav a shortcut to the big leagues. More games, higher stakes, offshore accounts, influencers to sell dreams to the desperate. Amit called it growth. Raghav called it survival. The money multiplied, the parties grew louder, and the nights stretched longer. Zoya watched him drift, trying to pull him back with words that sounded like warnings and love that felt like anchors. Raghav listened, but the Nasha was stronger. He believed he was in control. The first challenge came quietly, disguised as victory. A teenage boy jumped off a building after losing his father's savings on one of Raghav's platforms. The news flashed briefly and moved on. Zoya didn't. She confronted Raghav, holding the story in her trembling hands, asking him when games stopped being games. Raghav defended himself with numbers and logic, saying people chose their risks. That night, Zoya slept on the couch, and a silence settled between them that money couldn't buy away. The second challenge was sharper. Enforcement agencies began sniffing around. Amit urged Raghav to double down, to move funds, to erase trails. Fear wrapped itself around Raghav's chest, but greed whispered that this was the final push before freedom. He ignored his mother's calls, lied to Zoya, and signed papers he'd barely read. The city that once applauded now watched with suspicion. Friends vanished. Smiles turned transactional. The Nasha demanded more. The breaking point arrived on a rainy evening when Zoya published her biggest story yet. She exposed a digital gambling nexus without naming Raghav directly, but the truth was clear. She chose integrity over love, hoping it would save him even if it cost her everything. Raghav felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. Words were said that could never be taken back. Zoya walked away, leaving behind a note that said she loved the man he was before the money taught him to lie. Then the fall came fast. Accounts were frozen. Amit disappeared. Warrants were issued. Raghav was arrested at dawn, his mother watching from the doorway with eyes that carried more pain than anger. In the cold of the holding cell, stripped of power and noise, Raghav finally felt sober. The Nasha wore off, leaving guilt raw and unavoidable. He replayed every choice, every warning ignored, every hand he had pushed away. The real challenge was not the case or the jail time. It was facing himself. During months of legal battles, Raghav chose to cooperate, to return what could be returned, to speak publicly about the dangers of addiction, masked as entertainment. Zoya visited him once, not as a lover, but as a human being who needed closure. They talked without shouting. Forgiveness was not promised, but understanding was born. When Raghav walked free, the city did not welcome him. He took a small job teaching basic coding at a community center, helping young minds build skills instead of illusions. He moved his mother into a modest home paid for honestly. At night, he wrote, documenting the seduction of easy money and the cost it demands. Slowly, his words reached people he once exploited, turning regret into responsibility. Years later, on a quiet evening, Raghav and Zoya met again by chance at a cafe. There were no dramatic reunions, just two people who had survived the same storm from different shores. They smiled, shared a simple conversation, and parted with respect. Some love stories don't end together, but they end right. Nasha had promised Raghav everything, and almost took his soul. Game, Paisa, Ladki, each had tested him, broken him, and rebuilt him differently. In the end, he learned that real victory is not in winning the game, but in knowing when to stop playing. The city still roars, temptations still shine, but Raghav walks steadier now, carrying a truth he hopes others will hear before the sirens sing their names.